Please stand by. The event will begin momentarily. Please stand by. The event will begin momentarily. Please stand by. The event will begin momentarily.
Hey everybody, I'm Brian Damasio. I'm the conservative debater from Burbank High School. First, start off, I'm a cadet major and soon to be cadet lieutenant colonel in Civil Air Patrol, which is the civilian auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force. I'm a student leader on Burbank's local first robotics team 980, the Thunderbots. Very successful, award-winning robotics team. For the past few years, I've been involved with Burbank's Political Science Club, involved with the NAF Engineering Council. I'm involved with my local parish. I'm a team leader for my local Catholic Church, St. Robert Bellman, for the confirmation program there. So I do a bunch of things. There are a lot of people that inspire me. For example, there's a fighter pilot called Brian Scholl who was shot down over Vietnam, saved by Special Forces. He spent about a year in a hospital, and instead of giving up, he just kept going and ended up flying the SR-71. His whole skin's burned, and he's severely injured, but he never gave up and kept wanting to do what he wanted to do. And now he spends his life being a photographer, which was his side passion. So stories like that about overcoming overwhelming odds and resilience keep me going. I feel awesome. I always feel awesome. If I ever feel anything but awesome, something's wrong.
Please stand by. The event will begin momentarily.
Hello, I am Jeffrey Dalton Edward Stein II, and I am the Liberal Debater from John Burroughs High School. Activities I generally love to participate in is writing and debating like this upcoming debate. It's anything that has to do with the exchange of ideas, because society is built ever stronger when ideas are exchanged freely and people are given the opportunity to refine their ideas by hearing the ideas of others. I'd say that I look up to people like Alan Watts or like Teddy Roosevelt or Abraham Lincoln, people who had a degree of understanding about the world and acted on it to try to make the world a better place as they saw fit. People who didn't take no for an answer, in a good way, of course. I would say I'm very excited, to say the least. I feel like this is going to be a grand opportunity for both myself, my opponent, and everyone who decides to watch or participate in this debate.
Please stand by. The event will begin momentarily. Hi, my name is Andre Dionysian. I am a liberal from Burbank High School. I am a member of many organizations and projects. For example, I am the event director for this here debate. I'm the president of the Burbank Student Alliance. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Burbank Bulldog, the school newspaper. A co-host of SNAP, the director of education at the TED Ed Club. I think FDR is a very interesting case because he had a crippling illness and he still went on to serve his country in a greater capacity than any other president before him. Truly inspiring. I feel good, very confident, very excited. Honestly, win or lose, I just hope that we'll inspire our friends and our peers to engage in civil discourse and not to be afraid to stand up for their opinions. Please stand by. The event will begin momentarily.
Hi, my name is Bella Santiago. I am currently a senior at John Burroughs High School, and I am a conservative. Inside school, I'm a part of the John Burroughs High School yearbook staff, where I create content for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, and I'm in charge of representing the class as a whole. Outside of school, I'm also a volunteer at Los Angeles GOP, where I make flyers for any campaigns or any important news that has happened in the election. And I also own my own skincare and soap business called B-Box. If I had to pick someone I look up to or my biggest role model, it would have to be my dad. He's a very outspoken and confident man, and he and I are both very similar. And going into this debate, I am super excited and grateful to be given this platform to speak on my conservative views. I know many kids have been scared to speak out on their views with the fear of being judged by their friends or family. I just want to break that barrier, and I don't want anyone to be afraid to be who they are with the fear of being judged. And thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Please stand by. The event will begin momentarily.
Dare to know. Dare to know the atrocity. Dare to know the terror. Dare to know the despair. Dare to know the movement. Dare to know the truth. Dare to know that we are Armenians, not targets to be reckoned with.
Attention. The opinions and statements made tonight do not reflect that of the Burbank Unified School District, Burbank High School, John Burroughs High School, BUSC NAF, or the WTP team. The WTP team is not operating under the instructions of the BUSD or any other party. And this event is not affiliated with the BHS Speech and Debate team.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Hello, welcome to the Burbank Virtual 2020 debate. My name is Cyrus Arnold, your host and MC for tonight. Tonight's debate will be in two parts, each with one conservative and one liberal. One will be from John Burroughs and the other will be from Burbank High. Before we begin, we'd like to dedicate this debate to the Burbank Unified NIF. In the audience tonight, we have some very special guests. Burbank Vice Mayor Bob Frutos and GUSD board member Sean Sahakian. The WTP team would like to extend a special welcome to them. And now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce co-moderator and deputy event director Tony Orducanyan.
Good evening, fellow students and distinguished guests. My name is Tony Orducanian, and I would like to appreciate your attendance for the Burbank Virtual 2020 Political Debate. Not only serving as the Assistant Event Director, I take great diligence and special honor in co-moderating tonight's political debate alongside the wonderful Delaney Finnegan. Before commencing, all of us at SNAP and the WTP team would like to address a message of paramount importance: the purpose behind these debates. As Americans face media and news outlets on this year's upcoming election, we all tend to forget the true values of our democracy. We embrace the moments of discourse to declare our distinct thoughts and to dispute upon our common ideologies. Yet, a spare minute is never found to appreciate the only qualification of our politics: the power of our voices. With every success and failure, results of various issues spark from ideas of prospects in our nation's future. We, the people of the United States, bond on our common grounds and our opinions in order to form a more perfect union, to provide for the common defense of any voice censored or halted before the doors of civil discourse, and to promote the general welfare of every man, woman, and child. We must ensure that no idea or concept is buried beneath the chaos of our lives. As those continue to believe our democracy is near the brink of conclusion, I for one urge you all to not allow that to be our future. Continue to seek hope in what a nation demands. Continue to seek insights from others' voices, and continue to preserve the profound spirit of American democracy. And now to read our debate rules, our Master of Ceremonies, Cyrus Arnold.
Thank you, Tony, for your inspiring words. Now, let's get started. Here are the rules. Each section will have 4 moderator questions and 3 audience questions. Each debater will have 60 seconds to answer the questions and an additional 60 seconds to respond to their opponent. For audience questions, each debater will have just 45 seconds to answer questions that you can submit by tweeting us with the hashtag #BurbankDebate. A coin toss will determine which speaker goes first. At the end of the debate, you will get to vote for the winner, and don't forget to stay until the end for instructions on how to get your extra credit if your teacher does accept it. And now, let's meet our first 2 debaters. From Burbank High School, liberal Andre Dionysian, and from John Burroughs High School, conservative Bella Santillano. All right, let's get ready to rumble!
Good evening. I'm Delaney Finnegan, and this is Tony Orducanian, who you heard from moments ago. It's now my honor to present our first 2 debaters, conservative Bella Santillano from Burroughs and president of the Burbank Student Alliance, liberal Andre Dionysian from Burbank.
A coin toss has determined that Bella Santillano will go first. Ms. Santillano, the United States recently lifted its moratorium on capital punishment and has begun executing inmates on death row. Do you believe that the death penalty is a fair and just punishment for certain crimes?
I believe that capital punishment should be offered to jurors regarding certain offenses like terrorism, mass murderers, and serial killers. We need to stop asking ourselves, how will the death penalty improve us as a society, when clearly research shows that death penalty doesn't prevent other crimes from happening. Rather, we need to start asking, how did the criminal go about killing his victims, and how many lives have they affected? For example, we could take El Chapo, who is known as the Osama bin Laden of Mexico. He ran one of the largest drug trafficking rings in the world, known for dismembering his victims' bodies, got millions addicted to drugs. But we asked ourselves the original question: how did the criminal go about killing his victims, and how many lives have they affected? I urge you to consider what would happen if he were to escape again, considering he's already done it twice. We take that risk every day he's alive. Another thing we absolutely need to consider, there has to be solid evidence or DNA or to prove that the criminal is guilty, and that it requires, even if it requires the case to be reopened, so be it. But we need
Ms. Santillano, your time is up. Mr. Dionysian?
Thank you. Society has a right to defend itself, but not to be vengeful. By putting murderers and rapists behind bar for life, we can protect society without taking their life. Because at the end of the day, the way we treat the worst of humanity reflects the values of the best of humanity. And I, for one, do not think we should begin extrajudicial killings or violating, I apologize, we can, for efficiency's sake, forgo the right to fair trial and begin extrajudicial killings and even violate posse comitatus. But we don't do that. Why? Because we're better than that.
Mr. Dionysian, thank you. Ms. Santiano, your response?
When someone is convicted of murder and sentenced to death, jurors represented the case, shown all the evidence, and decided, as we the people, that the defendant should be put to death. What is so humane in the way that they killed their victims? Who are you as someone who has not seen the evidence to say that the person does not warrant the death penalty? There is no redemption for this person. Once the criminal has been convicted, they become a ward of the state, and they are no longer a free man, and we've given the state that power to carry out such penalties. If you don't like the idea of the death penalty, then voters need to go out and correct that method of punishment. Not to mention, what is worse? Think about that. Being caged like an animal in an 8 by 10 foot cage with cement walls for the rest of your life, with only human interaction for an hour a day, or speeding up the lethal injection process by first lowering the costs for law and prison systems.
Thank you, Ms. Santiano. Thank you, Ms. Santiano. Mr. Dionysian, your response?
Ms. Santiano, believe me, my concern is not their redemption. It may very well be that they are beyond that. But what's important to understand is that we shouldn't weigh their punishment based off of what makes us feel good, or moreover, what we think is best for them. We should do what is right, and what is right that we maintain the moral high ground, which we cede by just killing them. We know what is right and what is wrong, and we will not stoop to the level of murderers and rapists.
Thank you, Thank you. Mr. Dionysian, you will start off our next question. Our public education system is in crisis. What should we do to better prepare our children for an increasingly competitive world market?
We need to start with a baseline. Every student in the United States should receive the same quality of education. The reason we can't fix education in this country is that the system is different from state to state, even from city to city. We can try all the revolutionary ideas we want. It won't matter if it only affects a lucky few. That's why I believe instead of funding charter schools and school vouchers, we need a national public education system that's funded directly by the federal government.
Ms. Santiano, your response?
Ms. Santiano, your response?
So I want everyone to consider this situation. With one city, a gym is near everyone, and everyone pays the same for a gym membership. It's overcrowded, it's dirty, and employees have clients to train, but cost extra like outside private tutoring, and equipment isn't available to them. The most unfair part is that people are paying a yearly membership that can't be used to their full capacity. Now imagine in City 2 with 4 different gyms in an area, and they have the basic standards of every gym with machines, just like the standards that the state provides for education. But they allow members to prioritize other ways of exercise. It's cleaner, more personal attention is given from trainers, and there's no contract, so money freely moves with you from gym to gym. City 1 represents public schools, while City 2 represents the option of school choice or charter schools. Taxpayer money goes towards public schools, and then kids are restricted to a district where not all their needs are met. Whereas with school choice and charter schools, the money follows the student, and students get individual
Ms.
help.
Santiano, your time is up. If I may please remind all on this call, please remember to keep your mics muted when somebody is speaking. Thank you. Mr. Dionysian, your response?
Ms. Santiano, unfortunately, while it sounds great on paper, in reality what ends up happening is you're taking money from public education and diverting it to private schools.
Mr. Dionysian, may you please unmute yourself? You are muted.
I'm sorry, one of you guys muted me. Guys, one of you guys muted me.
Mr. Dionysian, you are muted. We cannot hear you.
I'm sorry.
For those that are...
Yes, pardon me. I was muted by somebody else in the call. From now on, can nobody mute anybody? Just remain quiet. Yeah. I apologize to the viewers. What I was saying is, pardon me. What I meant to say is that, unfortunately, in practicality, what Ms. Santiano said just simply doesn't work. You end up taking money from public education and diverting it to private education, which first off is far more expensive, and secondly, does not meet the rigorous standards that our public education system needs to meet. Furthermore, a lot of these private schools are religious. We have a secular government, and we have that for a very important reason. You can go to church, and that is your right to do so. You can believe any faith that you wish to, but you cannot impose that on the children of others. That is where we draw the line in a plural society.
Okay. That is the end of that question.
That is the end of that question. Delaney, will you please lead the next question?
Sorry, Delaney is muted.
Unmute yourself.
Delaney, please unmute yourself.
To all the people on this call, please unmute yourself and just remain silent. Everybody, please unmute yourself. And I apologize to the viewers at home.
Andre, there's usually an echo when everybody's all unmuted, so if you are not speaking, keep yourself muted, actually.
Tony, you are leading us in the next question.
Excuse me, sorry. Alright. Mr. Junison, you will start. Excuse me. Okay. We will now move on to abortion. A rising number of states are passing laws limiting access to abortion across the country. Do you believe these laws should continue to be implemented? Ms. Santiano, you will begin.
The only times that abortion should be legal is if the doctor has evidence to prove that the mother has a high rate of facing complications after birth from prior health issues. The baby would have serious abnormalities, acts of violence like rape, because rape is not consensual sex, and abortion should only be legal before the 8th week of pregnancy. So the question everyone asks regarding to abortion is, when is the baby considered alive? Because if a mother were to kill her live child after birth, she would be charged with murder. So let's look at abortion in a different perspective. When is someone considered dead? Someone is considered dead when their heart stops beating and the lack of blood flow to the brain and there's no neurological activity, so then they're considered brain dead. So with that, the baby is in the mother, has a beating heart rate, there's electrical impulse movement that indicates that the brain is beginning to function. Even if the brain isn't developed at full potential, it is still a person like you and I or anybody watching this live stream. There's plenty of people who live in a vegetative state, not living a full life, but yet we wouldn't consider killing them.
Thank you, Ms. Santiano. Thank you, Ms. Santiano. Mr. Dionysian.
A woman's right to choose cannot and will not be infringed. Especially now when the future of Roe v. Wade is being questioned, we need to look to the states to stand up for what's right. The decision to carry a pregnancy to term is a decision only a woman can make. Their spouse may give input, their doctor a medical assessment. But ultimately, only she must choose. The burden of this choice is unfathomable to the rest of us. It's already difficult enough without the government now telling her what to do.
Thank you, Mr. Dionysian. Ms. Santiano, your response?
The baby in a woman's body, her body. The baby is in her body. The woman's body isn't being sucked out of herself through a vacuum and ripped apart like what they do during abortions. The baby is inside her. That's why in my argument I said that abortion should only be legal before the 8th week of pregnancy. Not to mention DNA has been set and is different from the mother by the 10th week, and the baby already has its own fingerprints. These are the complex characteristics that are included in each individual. And Mr. Dionysian, something for you to think about. Chris Watts was sentenced to 3 consecutive and 2 congruent life sentences for the murder of his wife, daughters, and his unborn baby, who she was pregnant with. So then why does the baby's life matter then under the law? Because it wasn't a medical abortion. He still killed the baby, and that's the whole point of abortion, is to kill an unborn child.
Thank you, Ms. Santiano. Mr. Dionysian.
Ms. Santiano, your characterization of what the purpose of an abortion is wildly inaccurate. To put it simply, an abortion is a medical necessity in most cases, and in others an economic one. The economic ones rarely, almost never are going to happen in the time frame we're talking about. Let's be clear, when you're talking late-term abortion, the number of times this happens is so rare you could cover them on the news and people wouldn't get tired of hearing it every single day, because it almost never happens. It's a fraction of 1%. And in those scenarios, it's the scenarios with the most nuance that no law can govern. We have to trust that the doctor's recommendation and the woman's choice is going to be the right one, because most of the time, it's not something that a law can decide.
Thank you, Mr. Dionysian. Thank you, Mr. Dionysian. Our last question for the two of you is on immigration. The president has declared a crisis on the southern border. What do you think should be done about the border? Mr. Dionysian, you'll go first.
Thank you, Ms. Finnegan. The people who cross our border illegally are the ones who stand to lose the most if they fail. Their families, children. These are families and children who are risking their lives for a chance at a better one. All the mothers and fathers watching tonight know there is nothing stronger than a parent's need to protect their children. We cannot stop them, and we shouldn't. Let's make it easier for them to come here legally. At least we know who's in our country. In the long term, we need to help our southern neighbors grow their economies and bring gangs under control. The people we're talking about seek one of three things: safety, opportunity, or freedom. We wouldn't have this problem if they could find these things in their nations of origin. So until they can, we have an obligation to help them out.
Ms. Santillano, you're...
So question for everyone watching, why do you lock your doors at night? And if you do that, let me tell you why. You do it to protect your families from intruders, to prevent robbery, and you want to know if someone is sick and they're going in and out of your house. The reason you lock your doors at night is exactly why our country needs a border, preferably a closed one with extra caution of who we decide to let enter through our gates. Nobody can deny that the system needs repairing and upgrading. However, once we secure our southern border, we need the government to come up with a new plan to track how many people come into our country with visas, find out who overstays them, and correct that issue. It is for our safety to protect our borders from people who may not be willing to work, cause crime, bring drugs, make a profit from sex trafficking, and let's not forget the billions paid to cover illegal immigrant expenses. My parents and anyone's parents who work hard for their families know that it is unfair for someone to think that they can just come into our country and receive all the benefits and we pass it out like candy. We just need to fix America first before we can help anyone else. Otherwise, America's not living up to
Thank you, Ms. Santillano. That is the end of the time given. Mr. Dionysian, your response?
Santillano, I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think the most powerful nation in the world and the one with the greatest economy is capable of helping their neighbors and helping themselves. Let's be clear here. The number of immigrants who come in for nefarious activities is far less than the number of Americans here doing nefarious activities. The point is that immigrants are some of the most American people here. They come here seeking the freedoms that we take for granted. And let's be clear, they don't take the money we send into the IRS. In fact, most of the benefits, almost all benefits, you can't get unless you are a legal resident and have a social security number. It's simply not true that this is affecting the American people the way people make it sound it is. One person, one bad apple, does something terrible. One immigrant commits a murder. All of a sudden, every immigrant is now a threat. That's simply not fair.
Thank you, Mr. Oh, sorry.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Dionysian. We now turn it over to Lily Goldman, Director of Operations, standing by with questions from our audience.
So, here are some questions that I've picked up from social media elsewhere, Twitter, etc. At Brandon2134 asks, should the U.S. intervene in foreign conflicts?
Sorry. To the audience at home, we forgot to designate which of the moderators would would decide who goes first. Delaney, could you just pick someone randomly, either me or Bella, to go first?
Sure. Mr. Dionysian, you'll start off this question.
Could you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course. Okay. The question was, should the U.S. intervene in foreign conflicts?
That's a very broad question. When we talk about foreign conflicts, let's bring up the example of Artsakh. Let's speak to one specific scenario. Yeah, in the event of Artsakh, if the United States, the most powerful military in the world, is able to put something to an end and we were able to save lives, I believe it is our imperative to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Santillano.
I believe that depends on how serious the situation is. If someone asks for our help, I think we should be able to help as much as possible. Considering that right now, I think our country needs more help to make sure that we're okay first, and then from there we can branch off, help with our military, and help other countries in need. But first, I think we need to make sure America is secure and in place.
Thank you, Ms. Santillano. Our next question.
Yes. I love government. Once are we really still the leaders of the free world?
Ms. Santiano, Ms. Santiano,
Absolutely, I believe we are still the leaders of the free world, considering that we have for many other. I believe that this country shouldn't just be based on race, but rather on the content of your character. And I definitely believe that everyone can come here and achieve the American dream as long as you work hard enough and strive to be the best that you can be, and you can benefit society.
Thank you, Ms. Santiano. Thank you, Ms. Santiano. Mr. Dionysian.
Well, let's think about this. There's an old saying, a follower with no leaders is just a guy taking a walk. Let's be serious. Since President Trump has come into office, we're just a guy taking a walk. People don't take us seriously anymore. I think we definitely have the potential to be. I think we are still the greatest nation in the world, and we definitely have the ability to restore our standing in the world.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Thank you, Mr. Dean. Next question.
Yes, and then for our last question, this one, audience, what do you believe improves the path to citizenship, and how do you feel about the path to citizenship?
Well, for starters, let's give a path to citizenship for all of our DACA immigrants. I think that should be step one. But I mean, immediately after that, look, the more people that come to the United States actually is great for us. Immigration is a driving factor in most nations' economies. Japan has a problem right now because they have a negative population. Their elderly population is dying at a faster rate than their young population is growing. And their economy is stagnant because of it. So yeah, we need to make sure we can get good people, good hardworking people, to come be citizens of the United States.
Thank you, Ms. Santiano.
I agree with Mr. Dionysian, but I think people need to understand the process and the harms if we just have a large load of illegal immigrants coming into this country. Because with that means higher taxes, lower wages, and it's a constant cycle of like taking the taxes from the people, pay, spend, and generations to come are going to have to pay for it. And don't get me wrong, I think that illegal immigrants come here wanting to start a better life, get out of poverty, but somebody has to pick up that tab, and unfortunately it's going to be the American taxpayers. But I believe that both ends of the political spectrum need to come together and come up with a better plan to help citizens and the whole process go fast.
Thank you. So that's all for the first half of our debate. Thank you, Mr. Dionysian and Ms. Santiano.
All right, folks. Remember to tweet your questions with the hashtag #BurbankDebate. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief message from our sponsors.
Do you like money? If you answered yes, then there is no debate. Independent Advantage is the free money management program for high school students that focuses on financial life skills that you need to know before graduating. This 4-part series will teach you the basics of managing your money and maintaining your finances. The 2021 course schedule will be available soon. Visit www.independentadvantage.org to learn more about this opportunity.
The best is yet to come.
That's what it is. What's that?
The best is yet to come.
Welcome back. Remember to tweet us with your questions with the hashtag #BurbankDebate. And now it's time for round 2.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's now begin the second half of the debate. From JBHS, we have Liberal Jeffrey Stein II, and from BHS, Conservative Brian DiMascio. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin with healthcare. Voters have indicated that healthcare is among the top issues this election cycle. What should be done to ensure affordable access to healthcare for all Americans? A coin toss has determined that Mr. DiMascio will go first. But before he goes first, I'd like to remind all debaters and all moderators that you must keep your microphone off, muted, so that we all can hear everybody's arguments, so that nobody is echoing and everything is going clear. So please, one microphone at a time. Mr. DiMascio, you may begin.
In the middle of a pandemic, healthcare is one of the most important rights that people need to have. We have a very large problem with people not being able to afford the healthcare they desperately need, with families losing family members left and right. It's very painful, and many of us know people who have died. Now let's talk practicality. We need as many people on healthcare as soon as possible, and if we want that to be a reality, we need to add a public option to Medicare and Medicaid so we can actually pass this healthcare bill through Congress in a divided country. With the left and right as partisan as they are, with a Congress as dysfunctional as the one led by Mitch McConnell, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi in the House, we need an effective plan that can actually get through before the pandemic is 2 years past. So let's add a public option, drop aside Medicare for all, and focus on what works so we can get people the healthcare that they desperately need.
Thank you, Mr. DiMascio. Mr. Stein?
I am in favor of a government-funded, single-payer system. For example, Bernie Sanders' plan, which was audited by economists. Now, this plan would cost roughly the same as what we pay right now, but those costs would fall to the government rather than to the average citizen, meaning that your average family will not be brought to financial ruin just by one unexpected medical expense.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mr. DiMascio, your response?
Now, I'm sure that single-payer socialized medicine sounds like a great idea, but let's talk practicality. Bernie Sanders was absolutely demolished in the 2020 primaries, and that was within the Democratic Party. You want to talk practicality in the middle of a pandemic of getting people the health care that they need desperately. There are people who cannot afford the care that they need to survive. And if we're talking single payer, that will never pass the House. That will never get through the Senate. And if we have a Republican victory in just a few weeks here, that will never get signed by the executive branch. So let's talk practicality. Bernie Sanders couldn't even win his own party's nomination. How do you expect his healthcare plan to win over the country?
Thank you, Mr. DiMascio. Mr. Stein, your response?
The reality at force is that this new healthcare system, single payer, would be significantly better than our current system. It will, like I said before, it'll cost roughly the same as what we have right now, but it will cut out the horrifyingly corrupt bureaucracy we have right now so that every single person can get more medical coverage for what is overall less. And not to mention, think about it this way. Every single person in this country has, hopefully, insurance. That's the hope. But let's be honest. Not everyone in this country has insurance. This system will give people that. And that is the important thing here. Everyone needs this healthcare system in this pandemic, but also in general.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. We now turn to government spending. The national debt currently is at about $27 trillion. Young people, like us, are worried that we will have to pick up the tab left by our parents and grandparents. What should we do as a nation to reduce the deficit? Mr. Stein, you have the first word.
The big source of our national debt is our absurdly large military budget. Our military spending is currently approximately half of the federal budget, around $2 trillion. We could cut that in half. Our army, due to the nature of cyber warfare and ideological war over traditional war, is a scarecrow army, meaning that we have gravitas and diplomatic power, but we don't wield any of our true military power. Our military spending is currently #1 in the world, more than the next 23 countries spending combined, 21 of whom are our allies. We could downsize our military, salvaging the federal budget without any cost to our national security.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. This concludes the first part of this section. The next question will be going on to government spending. So, Andre, if you may please mute your microphone. Yeah.
We're on government spending. It's time for Brian to say his response.
My bad. This is a meme now. This is a meme. I'm going to be a meme. Excuse me. Oh my god. Okay. Continue.
All right. First, actually not impact our national security at all is frankly absurd. The United States' overwhelming military superiority is not a paper tiger. The reason that we've had a peace since 1945 is overwhelming military superiority. The global market economy which exists right now, which is navally based on container ships going around the world without being harassed by pirates and countries looting them, is because of the U.S. Navy. Without the U.S. Navy, our global economy, all the cheap goods that you're relying on right now, all the infrastructure that has created billions of dollars and lifted billions out of poverty, will be gone. Our allies depend on the United States. With an aggressive Russia and a rising China, which is rapidly catching up to our military spending, it is our duty as the leader of the free world to defend Taiwan, to defend South Korea, Japan, Estonia, Latvia, Croatia, all these countries that rely on our security. They rely on us, and if you want to cut that budget in half, they'll start falling like dominoes.
Mr. DiMaggio.
You see, the thing is, when it comes to our military presence in these other countries, yes, we certainly serve as an asset to our allies. But for the most part, our military's function is to simply stay in their countries. Very few military members actually see active combat, meaning that we could continue to provide the same kind of support for significantly less money, especially when you consider that a not insignificant portion of our army spending is going to weapons manufacturers who are charging, to put it bluntly, absurd prices. So by cutting the military budget, we do not cause that big of a detriment to our operations. In fact, we will be forcing weapons manufacturers to start charging proper prices or suffer economically. Ultimately, this creates a strange kind of equity.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mr. DiMaggio, your response?
You literally just proved my argument by saying that. Do you know why most of our troops overseas do not see combat? It's because the U.S. presence in those countries is the only thing that is securing them. The majority.
Thank you, DiMaggio. We'll now move on to the next one. Tony?
Thank you. Once again, I'd like to apologize for my mistake on air. I have become a meme now. So, Mr. DiMaggio, you'll be starting us off in the next topic, which is gun control. As school shootings have increased dramatically in the last decade, students at Burbank High School and across the country fear the possibility of such an event occurring on our campus. Many progressives have suggested the use of gun buyback programs or assault weapons bans. How much of an impact could either of these have?
Thank you. This is something that I deal with too. You know, every time I go to school, obviously there's always that. It might be today. It might happen to me. But let's talk practicality once again. Just like with healthcare, we are in a very, very divided position today in our country where we are more partisan than we've ever been. And if we want actual change that will save lives, let's talk practicality. We need to work across the divide here. And frankly, the conservative part of this country will not accept a gun buyback. They will not accept an assault weapons ban. So let's focus on what works and what will save lives. Let's put resources into training so that there are no more negligent discharges. Let's put effort into background checks so that nobody can get hands on guns if they are not the right person to have one. And let's have mental background checks as well to see if people that are getting the weapons are mentally fit to own one. Let's not do this in a country where there are more guns than people, and that'll lead to mass revolts, mass violence. We need unity and bipartisanship.
Thank you, Mr. DiMaggio. Mr. Stein?
No reasonable civilized society would allow the average consumer a weapon that can kill many people in less than a minute. On top of assault weapons bans, we must introduce stringent gun licensing systems that will work significantly better than any background check could ever hope to. We license cars absurdly stringently, and yet anyone can have a gun. That makes no sense to me. Setting up these kinds of gun licensing systems is the best way forward to stop this problem of gun violence.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mr. DeMont, your response.
Considering the fact that I drove here in a car today proves your point wrong. I could have easily turned that car, ran into a crowd like in East France, killed 40, 50 people. Guns are not the only thing that kill people. However, what we have to do is make sure that they get into the right hands. And again, we go back to this whole issue of partisanship. We have more guns than people in the United States. And if you think that practically you could license all of those and get that law through Congress, have it enforced by the federal government, have it enforced by state police, that is just not going to happen in the environment that we are in today. The policies I'm suggesting are practical, they are reasonable, and they will be accepted because in a country where we need to accept the minority's opinion, that is critical. And if we want progress, you can't do winner take all because half the time you don't get anything.
Thank you. Mr.
In this situation, the solution that everyone can agree on is for use, because the frank result here is that we need these kinds of stringent moves that are definitely going to ruffle some feathers. We need these systems. And to this whole idea that we can't police it, we absolutely can. The only reason that we haven't previously shut down black market operations or other similar illegal gun sales is simply because we have not been diverting enough resources to that effort. If we actually did, we could get amazing things done and actually see this through.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Now move to China. With China increasingly aggressive on the world stage, they are becoming a larger threat to the U.S., her allies, and interests around the globe. How should we handle this escalation in tensions between the U.S. and China? Mr. Stein, you'll begin. Tony, your timing.
China needs to be opposed via unity with our allies as well as the various Asian countries around China, because actual war can only result in complete ruin. We need to specifically reduce the power of their dictator, President Xi Jinping. With said unity, we can undo China's economic and therefore political influence, which will protect the world from China's most negative influences. And by reducing China's power, we can incentivize their people to pick a better leader than their current dictator.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mr. DiMascio, your response?
The framework for a coordinated U.S. response to China already exists. It's our defense relationships that are currently in place. And as I suggested earlier, slashing our military budget in half would merely be an invitation to advancing China's interests abroad. Our military presence globally is the reason, partially, for our hard power influence as well as our soft power influence. Our relationships with NATO, the United Nations, and other Southeast Asian nations and their respective organizations are the single reason that their advancement is slowly being held back. Let's coordinate with our allies, get our economy into a position where we can effectively combat theirs on the global stage, limit their influence, but most of all, the military serves as both a practical and a strategic deterrent. The mere fact that it is so powerful deters Chinese aggressive action. This is not an approach on one hand. If you cut off the left hand, which is the strong arm, the right one won't be enough, and that's the economic arm.
Thank you, Mr. DiMascio, for your response. Mr. Stein, your response?
A combined political and economic approach is by far the best one, because if we were to increase our military presence, that would only inflame tensions at best, and at worst, it would get incalculable amounts of people killed. And I, for one, am not interested in that happening. But with this careful economic and diplomatic tactics, we can undo China's influence. For example, their Belt and Road Initiative. With this, we can undo some of the economic damages that China has wrought upon America and her allies. But we, of course, have to be careful with it.
Thank you, Mr. Stein, for your final response. Mr. DiMascio, your final response?
As I said earlier, the approach to China is a multi-pronged one. The economic aspect is certainly a part of it. We need to push them into the middle income gap so that their economy is in a position where it's vulnerable and we can control them. Because right now, their aggressive foreign policy is moving into Africa, is moving into Southeast Asia. But the military is half of that solution. We need to bring together our allies, and our military relationship is a key part of that. If you cut the defense budget in half, they will be encouraged to be more aggressive.
This is hard and soft power. Hard power being the military, soft power being political and economic influence. If you want to contain China, you need both, not just one, or else they're going to be incentivized to roll out an aggressive strategy which includes force. Overwhelming American military superiority is the sole reason that we got through the Cold War, and it's the sole reason we'll get through this one too.
Thank you, Mr. DiMaggio. Delaney, you may continue.
We once again turn it over to Lily Goldman, Director of Operations, standing by with questions from our audience.
Okay, Damasio, recently we have been seeing a large spike of protests around the world supporting Black Lives Matter. One of their main movements is to defund the police. Do you believe in this? And if so, why?
Mr. Stein, give the first response. You have 45 seconds.
I believe that defunding the police is not necessarily the best way to go. What a lot of people fail to recognize is that we can have civil rights and policing at the same time. When it comes to policing, defunding the police is not the correct way to go, as I previously stated. What we need is institutional reform within policing, which will therefore allow us to deal with the civil rights issue at hand. Defunding the police doesn't fix the corrupt infrastructure of policing. It just makes policing in general weaker, which is not good in a nation as big as ours.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mr. DiMaggio, your response?
Absolutely. So what we need to do is actually fix the problem. Solutions cost money. If we want body cams so that police are held accountable, if you want the fact that so we have judicial systems to put in charge police officers who are tried for crimes or misconduct, those things cost money. If we want our police to be accountable, if we want our police to be respected, if we want our police to be part of the community so they can actually affect change and promote law enforcement in their own community, that doesn't just have to come out of a 9mm pistol. That can come out of shaking a hand, responding to a call, open. That includes psychiatrists, mental health experts, and accountability systems to make sure that our police are trusted by the communities that they serve. It's serve and protect.
Thank you, Mr. DiMaggio.
Second question has more to do with coronavirus. Recently, we've been seeing large spikes just very randomly around the U.S. Now, do you believe, as teenagers, in your senior year, that we should be going back to school next semester, like a hybrid system, or even returning full-time?
Mr. DiMaggio, you may give the first response.
A stereotypical pilot answer would be it depends, and that's because it depends. We'll see how the cases are. Depending on what happens November 3rd, different policies might change exactly what our situation is. If we're in a situation where in LA County, where a hybrid model will allow for a safe return to school, then let's do that, because we are losing a lot of our intellectual progress by being in virtual distance learning. However, if there is a serious health risk, if there is a situation where we might be going to school and it might become a super spreader event, let's hold back a bit, wait till cases come back, because this will pass. It will pass. We might not know how long, but it will pass. So let's put together a strategy where we see where we are and make a decision based on what's safest for our students, our parents, and the ones we love.
Thank you, Mr. DiMaggio. Mr. Stein, your response?
Unless the system for reopening is insanely complex and has contingencies for almost every single possible outcome, we absolutely should not be going back to school right now. This is a deadly disease, and until we have a vaccine that almost everyone in this country has taken so that we can have proper herd immunity, until that point, it is definitely not safe to return to school. I definitely want to, but it is foolish to tempt fate like that and play with the lives of thousands of teenagers like this. We absolutely must stay in distance learning for this time being.
Mr. Stein? Thank you, Mr. Stein.
Last question, we'll be talking about education. Recently, we have seen that Measure I has passed, and there has been a major shift in teachers, what's offered to students, basically school-wide, district-wide. Now, do you believe that spending from the government should be shifted more towards education and less towards, should we prioritize education and their spending?
Mrs. Goldman, Mr. Stein, you may begin.
Absolutely, we should prioritize education. From education, almost everything else is possible. Who is responsible for where you are right now? Your teachers and your parents. And the government can't do anything about your parents, so the government can do something about your teachers. Absolutely, teachers should be funded. It is absurd that teachers have to operate on what is basically pathetic shoestring finances. We cannot have this, especially when this is futures at stake. There's an old saying, give a kid a bad pizza and he'll be sad for a day. Treat a kid like a bad pizza and his life is ruined. And that is exactly what's happening right now. Education is an afterthought, and that is ruining lives because genuinely hardworking and frankly amazing teachers.
Mr. Stein, your time is up. Mr. DiMascio, your response?
Absolutely, education has to be something that we look at. The fact that we are in a position where we are being the wealthiest Western country in the world is kind of absurd. We need institutional reform. We need to look at what education models actually work the best. I'm not an expert with education. I'm going through it right now, but I'm not an expert. But what I do know what works is allowing kids to have access to programs, internationally run programs, which are successful. I'm a team captain of a first robotics team, and that has taught me an amazing amount of project management, leadership, engineering, science, technology, all of that. And that's because of an organization that came in and allowed us to compete in an environment. Let's look at those, integrate those into the schools, allow students to interact and be part of their education. I don't know exactly what the best...
Thank you, Mr. DiMascio. That is the end of your time.
That's 50 seconds for sure.
Thank you, Mr. Damasio and Mr. Stein. That's the end of the second half of this debate. Remember to stick around until the end to learn how to get extra credit, if your teacher is offering it. And now let's turn it back to our Master of Ceremonies, Cyrus
That was
Arnold.
a great debate. But before you all leave, it's time to vote for who you believe is the winning team. While you hear the closing speech, there will be a QR code and URL on your screen where you can vote for the best debaters. But be careful and don't make a mistake. You can't edit your ballot. As a side note, please stick around until the end of the stream to find out how to get extra credit. And now, to give our closing speech, President of the California Youth and Government Burbank Delegation, Harrison Rodacher.
Rodacher. To be clear, it's pronounced Rodacher.
My fellow Americans, thank you for being with us at this historic event. In this day and age, the importance of civil discourse and debate cannot be underestimated. In a time where people are more divided than ever, in a time where people refuse to discuss or even listen to other people's ideas, it's more important than ever to hold events like these, where people can have an honest and polite discourse about their ideals. It's discussions like these that will begin to mend the cracks that have formed in our society. As a nation, we have grown apart, divided by our differences. But it's our differences that are supposed to make us strong. And there's no better reminder of that than debates like these, for diversity, both in ideas and people, that are the foundation of democracy. So, thank you everybody for attending this debate, and we hope to see you at the next one, whether it be virtual or in person. Thank you, and God bless America.
And now, it's time to announce the winners. And the winner of the Burbank Virtual 2020 debate is... Burbank High School! Thank you to all who joined us for this amazing event. And good night!
Hey everyone, if you're interested in getting extra credit, this is how it works. Quite simply, you're going to go to our website, that's debate.dnec.us. You press here under extra credit, and you click on the name of your teacher. So let's assume I have Mr. Broman. Just fill this out, and that's it. If your teacher gave you a companion assignment to fill out, you want to complete that as well. If you can't find your teacher, but you're pretty sure that they are offering extra credit, just to be safe, put it down here under can't find your teacher, and we'll go check it out and make sure you get your extra credit. Thank you and have a great day.
Whoa. Just one more thing. Mr. Broman, a big special thank you to you. Just for being cool.